parent question: how can I tell the difference between my son being uninterested in learning something versus it being just too hard for him right now? Or is it the same? So a wonderful parent asked this question inside my Mindful Movement group on Facebook, and I wanted to answer it for them. So if you don't know me, my name is Jen Stewart. I'm an Anat Baniel Method Practitioner, and I love to teach parents how to use slow, gentle movements right at home to excel their child's development. So this question, I love it, first of all, because the parent immediately, I know the parent has an awareness that their child is not just something mechanical that you can fix with a couple of movements. So the Anat Baniel method uses slow, gentle movements to access the potential of your child's brain's ability to learn something new. And mostly we focus on developmental milestones, so physical milestones, but instead of just doing physical movements to your child, we're accessing your child's brain's potential by giving them quality information, small pieces of quality information that their brains gather up, and their brain's ability to organize that quality information is part of the learning experience of how you learn a new milestone skill. So instead of doing something to our children, so instead of like 50 reps of an arm movement, if your child is learning to bring their hand up to their mouth, so instead of repeating this a million times, we're actually using slow, gentle movements to access their brain's ability to piece together and know where their own body begins and ends, and have that self-initiated movement instead of just copying something that's repetitively done to them. So we really pay attention to the fact that your child is not a car. We are not mechanics. We're not fixing a body part that's broken. We're actually accessing the potential of your child's brain's ability to learn something new. So this skill here, bringing the hand to the mouth, for instance, is a learned skill. Holding your head upright and having better head control is actually a learned skill. Okay, so the brain has to have the ability to coordinate the head over top of the spine, over top of the pelvis. The brain is the command center for organizing all the muscles and all the bones to put them in the right place to have really good head control in all sorts of different positions. And that's what I love to do for parents, is to teach them how to use these slow, gentle movements to help fill in any of the missing gaps that your child's brain might have. So this parent has obviously heard about the Anat Baniel method. She's probably had lessons before, and she's probably done some of my guided videos as well. And so she wants to know, is when I try the movements, is my son, and it's not working for my son, is my son just not interested in learning something right now versus, or is it too hard for him? Is it past his skill level? So she actually kind of already answered her own question, but she kind of just didn't get there. She was so really close to answering her own question in that, which I love too. So basically we have to distinguish between, is it hard for your child to learn in this moment? So it might be the case that in this very moment, it's just too hard for your child to learn because of the environment around them. So as parents, so that's something you can control at home, is creating the optimal environment for your child to learn something new, for them to learn a new movement skill. You have to have the right optimal environment. So if he's tired or hungry or thirsty, his brain is going to be preoccupied with keeping him safe, right? It's going to be preoccupied by feeling hungry and thirsty, and it's really hard to learn a new skill when your basic needs need to be met right now, right? And most small children don't have a lot of resilience built around that, right? So they need to be fed right away. They're thirsty right away. You need to handle that right away. Or maybe there's a lot of chaos in the home or around them, etc. So you as parents really have the opportunity to create that optimal environment for them. And one way, I would like to share 3 ways to create that optimal environment with you that I talk a lot about is, first of all, slowing yourself down. When you slow yourself down, it allows their brain to recognize what's going on, what's happening to them. Often we move really fast with our children, especially when we're on autopilot doing daily self-care activities. We tend to move really fast, especially as parents. Let's get this done. Let's get the feeding done. Let's get the dressing done. But when we slow ourselves down, all of a sudden we create space to try something new, to try a variation. It really highlights to their brain that, hey, pay attention to this. They're slowing down. This is something to pay attention. This is something to take note of. This is something to feel internally. So first of all, slowing down can really help create the optimal environment using soft hands and a soft touch. So when we go hard and fast, we can only do what we already know. So if I'm really, doing that repetitive movement of bringing the hand to the mouth, there's no option for exploring something that might work better for his body dynamics and his body physics. But we don't know if we're going really fast and I'm having a firm, like, hand over hand touch with him. So by, using a gentler touch, Anat Baniel calls it subtlety. So adding subtlety into the movement and the guidance can really help to their brain to pay attention, which leads me to the third thing. To create the optimal learning environment for your child is to bring, the whole point of this is for your child to learn a new skill, for your child to learn a new milestone. And they're not going to be able to do that if they don't know where they are in space, if they don't have that internal feeling of how they can move, they can self-initiate movement, their own self-autonomy up for them. Again, it's shifting your intention from viewing your child like a car that you can fix this one piece that seems to be broken, versus giving them giving their brain the quality input of information for them to figure it out on their own, how to bring their hand to their mouth, how to hold their head over their spine, over their pelvis. So really thinking, instead of using the movements in a repetitive way of, okay, I'm going to do 50 movements like this, to shift your intention from doing something to your child to bringing their brain's attention to themselves. So you're using the movement to get curious about how they move, what's their optimal way of moving, get curious about how their hand comes up to their face, to whatever. And when you get curious about the movement, guess what? Their brain is going to get curious about the movement. And that's like true organic learning. And that's what the best way to learn is, right? Because we want them to learn it, not us to learn the movement, right? So you can use those three things: slowing down, using a soft hand or soft touch, and focusing on bringing their brain's awareness to their own movements. So making that shift from you doing something to your child to bringing their brain's attention to themselves, using movement to bring their brain's attention to themselves. Okay, so that's creating the optimal learning environment. So if you do have an optimal learning environment and your child is still, not interested in learning, not getting it, it very well could be that it's too hard for them right now. So maybe they don't have all of the pieces needed for, I'm just going to use better head control for head control. Maybe their brain doesn't have all the pieces for them to hold their head upright under the force of gravity over top of their whole spine and their pelvis. So head control is a really complex movement. It's a really complex milestone skill. And some people think of it as like one thing. It's just, holding your head over top of your body. It's actually a really complex movement, especially if it's dynamic. So if I'm moving through space, my brain needs to know how to coordinate to all the muscles and all the bones to be able to balance my head, the big heavy head, over top of all of these vertebrae that can move individually from one another. They all have individual muscles and individual ability to move and flow. So their brains have to have experience in that. Their brain has to know how each of these vertebrae move together, separate, as one unit in different positions, in an infinite number of different positions, as well as how the pelvis moves, because we're balancing the head over top of the spine, over top of the pelvis. And that's actually one thing that I find with kids who don't have head control yet. If you back it up, their brains simply don't have all of this information of how to coordinate all of these infinite number of combinations of body parts together. So when you back it up, instead of putting them in a position where they can't hold their head up yet, we back up, we put them in a lying down position usually, or in your lap or supported position, and we start to explore, how does we'll break it down the pieces. How does their pelvis move? Does their pelvis know it can move to the left and to the right, up and down, in a circle? Does their brain know that when you move your pelvis, parts of your spine move too? Can your brain coordinate and connect those two, those three, those four, those five, all of the different vertebrae with the movement of the pelvis, and then finally up to the head? So it's a really complex movement. And often our kids' brains just don't have all of that experience and all of those pieces. And that's what the guided movement videos do for parents, is like I'm literally teaching you through the guided videos how to break down into components of the movements of the pelvis, how the pelvis is connected to the spine, how the spine's connected to the ribs, how the ribs are, connected to the head. All of that connections lays the foundation for your child's brain to gather up that yummy, delicious information and lay the foundation for that big milestone of better head control, of having head control. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And it gives you something to think about. Is your child not learning something because they're the optimal environment? Something you can change to create an optimal environment for them. And you as parents, obviously at home, you have tons of opportunity to kind of create those little tiny pockets of learning, those tiny optimal learning environments for your child. And just really think about slowing yourself down, using a soft hand and touch, and shifting your focus from doing something to your child to getting curious and bringing their brain's attention to themselves. So their own attention to themselves. So that's helpful for creating the optimal learning environment. And then if you've created that optimal learning environment and it's the right timing for them, they're not hungry or thirsty, etc., and they're still, you're still kind of struggling with some of the movements, the guided movements, or your child, you think your child just isn't getting it. It probably is because you're maybe placing them in a position they're not comfortable with yet, or they don't have all those puzzle pieces. They don't have those foundational pieces yet. So you get them back down on the floor or in your lap in a more safe, comfortable position. You always start where your child's at and you build up those foundational pieces from there, giving your child their brain, those quality pieces of information, so their brain can coordinate and create the puzzle piece, that larger puzzle of those bigger milestones, such as holding their head or crawling or coming into standing. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. And if you have any other questions, pop them down below and we will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.